What's up, rap stars? It's your host, Romeo Santos, co-host Kenny Fulton, and I'm feeling hype today because we are talking about something near and dear to my heart, and that is personal development, personal growth, discipline, and really achieve. Kenny, we talk about that stuff a lot, don't we?
Yeah, almost every day.
I like to geek out on this stuff. And you know what's really funny is I've been thinking a lot more about it. Have you ever done the strength finders?
It's like a self-analysis
Yeah,
tool.
yeah, it's one of the right. And like you have like
Yeah.
keywords that you are adjectives. And so what's really funny is the first time I was introduced to any sort of like a personality or behavior assessment was when I was working for the Lowe's Hotel Corporation, maybe like 7 years ago. And I always have this like replay on a loop when I start finding myself getting frustrated about how long things take to come to fruition sometimes. Because I think you could agree, I'm not patient, right? Like I want everything done yesterday. If it hits my mind today, I want it to be like done tomorrow, right? And
Hmm.
so that goes into another thing that we'll talk about. But I had this general manager there, and my word, my strength was achiever. Okay. Which basically means like get stuff done. And I think that's always been a driver of mine. Like it has been who I've been. Like, for example, I'm 5'9". I'm not that quick or fast. I was really good at baseball, but I made basketball every year, not because I was so good at basketball, but because I would hustle and give 150%. And like I would be on you like crazy, defending you, or I would just do the suicides 100%. And so the coach just had to keep me. I just gave too much of it, right?
Yeah.
But what I want to talk about today with you and with our audience, Kenny, is that when we're out on the playing field, that there are a couple things that we need to be aware of that really will determine our level of achievement. And I think more and more people are starting to talk about this on podcasts and thought leaders and gurus, if you would, out there. But it's really discipline. And what I think we can reframe that word, because who likes the word discipline, right? Like, do you like to be disciplined?
No, it has a negative connotation to it.
Right? It's got a negative connotation, like I'm getting in trouble, right? Yet that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that everybody that's alive right now is on the playing field, or I like to refer to it as the battlefield. And we're fighting. Now, a lot of people like to think that their fight is, well, the economy sucks, or there's too much competition, or it's just too hard, or I don't have the time, or we could go on and on and on for days, right? But we don't want to talk about that stuff. But the reality is that we really only have one opponent and one enemy on the battlefield. And who's that, Kenny?
It's ourselves.
It's ourselves,
Mhm.
right? You play golf. Rhetorical
I
question, I
try.
know, because I played with you. What do they say about golf? Where is 90% of the game played?
In your head, it's mental.
In your head, right? In your head. When you play golf with me, how many times do you hear me get upset with myself because the swing that I just made, as I completed the swing, I didn't even need anybody to tell me, but I knew that the swing was wrong.
Yeah.
Yet my practice swing 90% of the time is right.
Right.
But for some reason, I haven't been able to fix the 4 inches in between my ears to make sure that it translates from what I know it should be to what it actually becomes.
Hmm.
Well, I think that's often what we do in our lives, right? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of a good metaphor for life in general, right? Like, we're out there doing whatever it is, right? We're in real estate. Okay. We also do other businesses, investments, and I'm like a serial business starter, construction company, and I know that you've got lots of different things that you're, exploring as well. But no matter what it is, there's that struggle against ourselves and that struggle for the discipline, right? I've been listening to some yogis lately on TikTok. Believe it or not, TikTok has become like my go-to like quick burst of like motivational things, right? And more and more I keep hearing the message that the only thing in life that we need to master is our own thoughts and our minds. What does that make you feel when I say that, Kenny?
I mean, I think about it often because discipline for me is something that, it doesn't really have a negative connotation, but discipline is also a survival tactic.
Mm,
Um,
tell me more.
Oftentimes, well, if you think about, if you're a parent, and you have children and, you are their first subconscious mind, right? Like, I mean, you're telling them, look
Hmm.
before you cross the road.
Hmm.
Don't eat that. Don't touch that. Don't eat too much candy. All these things, we're kind of drilling into their brains because we know that if left to our own means, we have destructive characteristics as well, right? Having a drink every now and then for many people is okay. Having too many, could cause, alcoholism, liver disease, eating, bad foods every now and then for many people is okay. Having too much of that can cause, obesity, diabetes, early death. So I think in some ways, discipline has to show up in many areas of your life, but I think we kind of pick and choose where it's important to have discipline. But it's in there for many of us. If we think about like, well, you know what? I know guys who are really good going to the gym. They go to the gym
Hmm.
every day, right? And they got great physiques and, no money, not because they
Mm,
can't go after it. It's just because, they don't have the discipline to show up every day and do a job consistently or, take crap from customers and things like that, right? So I think
who does
sometimes
that?
it's
We don't do
about,
that, do
you know,
we?
sometimes it's just about like, hey, look, I have it in these areas of my life. How can so I know it's possible, but I'm not excelling in these other areas. So I have to find a way for it to show up there as well. So when I think about it as a survival tactic, I think because sometimes we don't learn that skill until we're in a really bad place, right?
Mm,
You don't think about hustling to get money until you have no money left, right? Now
mm,
it's a matter of survival. You don't think about being able to quit, a bad habit until the doctor says if you don't quit, you'll die. Then all of a sudden, we find it.
mm,
So when I frame discipline and that means of like, hey, if you can't listen, if you can't follow directions, you might be walking into oncoming traffic,
mm.
because you just refuse. But I like what you said earlier is that it's an internal conversation. It's about how do you talk to yourself. If you tell yourself, I can't do it, or the other day somebody said to me, I'm bad with names, right? I'm bad with names and I'm good with faces. It's kind of like a declaration. Like I'm not gonna remember
Hmm.
your name. I'm telling you right now.
Right.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And then I was like, I'm bad with names too. Like, but am I? Am I? If I met somebody who had a really great opportunity for me, and would I forget that person's name? Probably not, because I would look at that as an opportunity. That's the survival mode, right?
Mm,
So you have to have a conversation with yourself first about this is important to me. I want to, be better disciplined in this area. So you have to recognize it. And then you have to make sure you're making a conscious decision to do so for whatever that thing is for you, or it might be several. You might only be winning in one area of life and need discipline in the other 17 areas, but you
100%.
gotta have that conversation with yourself.
100%. I love that you brought that up too, because I think, well, I don't want to sound egotistical here, but I know that it's easy to be disciplined at things that come easy to you,
Yep.
right? Like, I enjoy working out, so it's easy for me to have built that habit because I enjoy it. I always grew up, I played sports, I was always an athlete. It was a habit that was formed long ago, so it was easy, right? I also like cookies. So if it's in the house, it's easy for me to be disciplined to make sure that I eat all those cookies until they're gone, right?
Right.
So discipline can be in two different ways, right? Like if your discipline is I want to gain weight and I like to eat all the cookies, okay, great, that's the discipline. But we're really also talking about habits, right? Because
Mhm.
we're really just the culmination of our habits. What's the saying? Um, don't practice the things that you don't want to become.
Mhm.
You just mentioned it, right? If you eat really bad food, you might get diabetes, you might get obese, right? So like, don't practice being a poor eater.
Mhm.
You mentioned alcoholism as a possibility as well. Don't practice being an alcoholic, right? Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just partying because I'm young. But you're practicing for the habit of being an
Yeah.
alcoholic, which can come on later in life, right? Just like obesity. I'm practicing, you all of a sudden lose something else in your life and you've already built those neurotransmitters, you've already communicated to yourself. And let's be honest, why is it so easy to form habits that are maybe not so good for you? Typically because they are habits that bring you pleasure, which release a chemical in your brain called dopamine, which digs deep grooves into your brain, and your brain automatically becomes conditioned to go back down those grooves to find that pleasure source,
That's right.
right? So if you can find a way to be disciplined to do the things that you truly don't want to do, you can then begin to build new grooves that will take you in a more desirable direction and ultimately a more desirable outcome, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some examples of some things maybe that you've done in your life that you didn't quit a bad habit, you just developed a new habit?
Hmm. I'd say, I mean, one thing that I think I used to struggle with when I was younger, like when I was, let's say like maybe high school years and things like that, was just like being able to have conversations with people, but avoiding, those conversations.
Hmm.
And so one thing that I found myself doing in my life is if there's an area I feel like I need to grow, I'll give myself no other option but to face that area. And
Love that.
sometimes that works for things, sometimes it doesn't, right? Like if you don't know
Sure.
how to swim, it's probably not a good idea just to jump into the deep end of the
Right.
pool because you
Right.
might drown, you know.
Right.
But so that's how some people learn how to swim, right?
Right.
That's kind of how I've approached life. So even with dealing with people, I made sure that whatever job I had, I had to interact with people, forced conversation. If I wanted to make money, I had to talk. And so
Hmm.
one of the jobs I had for a very long time growing up in high school, maybe around like 15 or 14, was bagging groceries. And this was
Hmm.
back when, you would bag groceries and you would push people's carts to their car and they give you tips, give you cash, right? You
Right.
didn't have to, they could if they wanted to. And I found one day that I told my story to this older woman, and she gave me $100. I was like, oh wow, I came back,
Wow.
showed the other baggers, hey, I got $100, right? And then everybody who had a story about getting $100 tip, it was always because you connected and you spoke to people and you exchanged
Right.
information, you asked them about themselves, and you only got like 5 minutes, from just pushing their cart up the hill to their car, right?
Right.
But I found that like what, this is something I need to develop in myself, and it rewards itself. And I do find that now people say, hey, that seems to come very naturally for you. And I'm like, you know what? That's good. It's good it appears to come naturally, but it's also good that I tell you that it didn't always come naturally, because that'll give you some encouragement that you can do it on your own too. It's these are skills that if you work on them, you can develop. Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, but I will say one that I recognize about you, so you never know if these things are just part of your personality or not.
Yep.
But you appear to be a very driven person. But even with being consistent, like every day, we meet. We have our morning meetings. We hold ourselves accountable. For what we're looking, to accomplish. So there's a quote, you might know it because you're really good with quotes, but it's something about the word discipline and disciple being inside of the word discipline, right?
Mm.
And so I think the message in there is that, if you lack discipline, be a disciple, learn from somebody else. If there's an area in your life where you want to improve and you want to be better at, if it's working out, and that's where you need to find some encouragement and you don't find it within yourself, look for the person who has the body that you want, or the life that you want, and follow that, so you can find that discipline within, following other people's paths. And
Sure.
sometimes you could be the mentor for somebody. Just you being disciplined in a certain way can encourage other people, like, hey, look, guys. So like there were some days where, you would get fired up after having a conversation with somebody else, then you would pass it on to me. And then you say, hey, Kenny, look, if we're going to be leaders, we both got to be doing this thing because people are looking at us to do it. And I think that you can hold other people to a higher standard, or at least show them that it's possible, if you're doing it as well. And it's really cool how that just continues to flow down.
Yeah. Love it. Love that. Yeah. And, it's funny that you say disciple, right? Because when you say disciple, I think religion, right? Like at its kind of, root definition of what a disciple would be. And of course, you can be a disciple of many things, but if you read the Bible, or any, the Torah, the Quran, I mean, whichever biblical book you may read, I believe that there's a common theme through all of them that basically echo what we're talking about, that say that the battle is within yourself, right?
That's right.
The battle is within yourself. Even the story of Adam and Eve was a story of a lack of discipline and also a lack of accountability, because what did they do to one another once God came back and asked them why they had eaten the apple?
Yeah, they hid.
They pointed the finger at somebody else,
Yeah.
right? He pointed at her and she pointed at the snake.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, again, discipline to be able to say, like, I screwed up. I know better. I'll do better next time. It doesn't mean perfection, right? Discipline is not perfection. It's not perfection in any way, shape, or form, I don't think. I think that discipline is the ability to, well, David Goggins, the famous Navy SEAL. I'm sure that everybody that's listening to this podcast, if they're listening to this podcast, has probably heard of who David Goggins is. Wrote the book Embrace the Suck, right? There's stories of him. Now, he's extreme. Of course, we're not suggesting that anybody, go out and be disciplined, that they run 100-mile marathons and run even while their feet are bleeding and injured and so on and so forth, right? But like, he talks about embracing the suck. Now, he comes from the land of the Navy SEALs, where, Hell Week, they like, through Bud School, they put you through some serious stuff. And what he talks about often in his interviews and also in his book is that the purpose of that is to see who they can break, not break
Mm-hmm.
physically, because he said clearly people are able to physically do it because they do it all the time.
Right.
It's their minds that break. It's not their bodies that break,
Mm.
right? It's their minds and ability to discipline their thought process and their thought patterns. And so he talks about embracing the suck and saying, like, if you are looking at something, let's say we're saying, I want to get to, we'll talk about real estate since we're in real estate. I want to get to $20 million a year in volume, right? I want to sell X houses that's going to get me there. Okay. 50 houses. but today you're at 10 houses a year. If you look at it as, man, how am I going to get to 50 houses? I'm only at 10 houses. You could be self-sabotaging your own brain to allow the negative thoughts to come in, which again leads to you being your own worst enemy, being able to control your thoughts and not go down that path of like, oh my God, how am I going to get to 50? I'm only at 10.
Right.
But what if the thoughts are more regulated because you choose them to be more regulated, and you say, just one more sale this month, or just one more contact today, right? I've made 20 so far today, one more contact today. And you do that every day for 6 months. And over 6 months, you've had 20 days times 6 months, 12, you've had an additional 120 contacts. Guess what? You're going to be doing a few more transactions from that one discipline of just saying, I'm going to do one more contact a day. Now you can tell your mind, I can do one more a day, but maybe saying I'm going to do 120 additional contacts in the next 6 months, maybe that might go, oh, I can't do that. It's so hard to get to 20 a day. Now I have to get to, that many more. That's now, 5 extra a week, 20 extra a month. People, we start to allow ourselves to create a narrative in our brain where we convince ourselves that that's too hard. I can't do that. Right. And what do we like to say all the time in our meetings? Look at somebody else, and if they can do it, then
we can do it.
That's right. If it can be done, if somebody else has shown that it can be done, then you can do it. Right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You asked me, what have I done? What's something in my life that I felt I needed more discipline in, and how did I do it? What in your life did you feel you needed more discipline, and how did you do it?
I think the biggest impact for me was I needed more discipline in my thoughts, and also in a routine. And those two for me went together, right? Because controlling my mind wasn't as easy as controlling my activities, because again, as an athlete, that was a discipline that came a lot easier to me. Now, with that said, I started by doing something called the miracle morning, right? And so I did a 2-prong approach where I just literally started ingesting every piece of information I could, book, podcast, quotes, webinars, you name it, that had a positive message behind them about personal development and taking charge and taking control, right? The Zig Ziglar, the Jim Rohn, the Tony Robbins, you name it. Anybody that was talking about mindset, I was consuming it like crazy. And that was helping me to subconsciously retrain those neurotransmitters to go into a different direction, right? Because before that, it was like, traffic sucks. That person is, this, that, right? It was easy because that was a discipline that I had grown up with. So that was a discipline I formed, that there was always something negative. And then the second thing that I did is I needed a habit that could give me the space to spend time with myself. And so the miracle morning was me getting up at 4 a.m. and doing what's called the savers, silence, just thinking, meditating, at the end of it, praying. Okay. I'm spiritual. I'm not very religious, but I do believe there's something else out there. It's my belief. Doesn't have to be anybody else's. Affirmations. The affirmations, I've done it in a different way where I have more of like a mantra, and that mantra is kind of ever evolving that I'll say, right? Things like, I'm in control of my thoughts. I'm in control of my actions. I am in control of my destiny, right? Like those types of affirmations that are true, because I feared what I'd heard from other people, that you got to be careful with affirmations because your mind knows when you're lying to it, right? So I couldn't say like, I'm successful when I hadn't been successful yet, right? Like I got a 6-pack when no, I don't have a 6-pack, right? Like, I don't drink any alcohol when no, of course I have a couple beers, throughout the week, whatever it might be. So I had to say things that were really true. Okay.
Mm.
Then V is for visualization. And so when I'm done with those things, I sit there and I visualize what my day is going to look like. I visualize what it's going to look like in 10 years when I achieve this long-term goal that I have, right? I can see it. You're in it every time, Kenny, by the way.
Hey, cool.
You're in it. It's my 50th birthday. Me and my family are coming in off of the river to our house. People are beginning to gather at our home to celebrate my 50th birthday and also the achievement of helping our 100th person become a millionaire, right? Like I
Yeah.
visualize that. I want it to come into focus for me. And then E, exercise.
Mhm.
So I always work out first thing in the morning, get my sweat up. I feel so much more powerful throughout the day when I do that. R is for reading and S is for scribing. So journaling. So the
Mm.
reading I don't do in the morning. I tend to do that throughout the day with podcasts and books and that sort of thing. And the journaling, I do it, but I'm not as consistent with that as I am with the others. But I love the journaling because I have a few journals that I do. I do one journal to my future self so I can look back each year and see where I was and what I was thinking and what my mind was feeling like. I'm just raw, I'm honest in that one. And then I do a journal to my wife, which is far less frequent, where I talk to her about the things that I appreciate about her and also the things that piss me off sometimes, right? And and then I have a journal where I share the thoughts and the lessons that I'm learning with my daughters, and I plan to give that to them on their 16th birthday so that they can begin to understand that all the things that dad has been talking to him, like he didn't
Yeah.
just say that out of nowhere, like he really believed it. And he's been saying that ever since they've
Mm.
been alive. So
Wow, that's really
that
powerful. Yeah.
that's what I've done that I think has had the largest impact on me as a human on in
Mm.
all elements.
Miracle Morning. Wow. I mean, it
Miracle
sounds
morning.
awesome. It also sounds very consistent with, what you hear a lot of successful people talk about,
A
waking up
routine.
early and yeah, having a routine and,
Mm-hmm.
being consistent, about
Yeah.
it. And one thing I've learned is that in order to get up early, you have to go to bed earlier. And I think that's something
Yes.
I've struggled with, for a
Mm-hmm.
while. I get
Mm-hmm.
very tempted, even like last night, yesterday was a big day, for us and get home, you still have some things that you need to tend to and some people who have questions that need to be responded to. And then I had to get up pretty early this morning. I had to get up, around 3:30 or so. So I
Oh
couldn't,
wow.
yeah, I couldn't stay up all night, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to. But it forced me to get home. Like, well, we just got to knock this out thing because we have to finish it. But I was like, it's possible to shut it down at 10 o'clock. I hadn't done that in a while. So yeah, I like the Miracle Morning. Is something that I need. I want. I will implement. In my own
Mm-hmm.
routine. I actually find it a lot easier to do that in the wintertime. I don't know why. I know maybe because it's
Hmm.
just dark anyway, um, um, but that's typically the time of year where I always feel like when other people are starting to slow down, that's when I feel the need to pick it up. When other
Interesting.
people stop going to the gym, they're like, oh, summer's over and it's holidays, it's time to get fat. You know, that's when I feel the urge to get back in there. When everybody else wait for January 1st to start a new, thing, whatever, I'm like, let's get ahead of them. Let's get a jump start on everybody else. Just like we
Yeah.
talked about our goals for the first quarter. Like, let's start on those objectives now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really great. That was really great.
Appreciate it. Well, you said something in there that hope maybe the audience picked up on, maybe they didn't, but I think it really is probably the biggest key to everything that we're talking about. Um, did you ever read The Art of War?
I don't think I finished it.
The Yeah, I mean it's a long one. I did the abridged version. So The Art of War, what I gathered from it It's obviously it's literally talking about the art of war, right? Like people
Right.
talked about it all the time, and I'm like, I don't know, it's a book about war. Like, how can that be impactful? And I listened to it, and I just listened to it, and I listened to it, and then it finally struck me. Yes, it's talking about war, and it's talking about the strategy of war, like the literal strategy and tactics of war, but it's not talking about war. It's talking about what is necessary to succeed in anything, and that is knowing your enemy. And so you just talked about that. You talked about something that you know about yourself. And so I believe that it's understanding who your enemy is. And we're talking about us being the enemy, ourselves.
Right.
Who are you? Do you have self awareness around who you are? Have you spent time talking to yourself? Not talking to yourself and responding per se out loud, but literally talking to yourself, asking yourself questions, letting your subconscious respond to you. Do you know who you are, what makes you tick, and what's important to you? Truly important to you. That's key in this whole
Mm.
self-discipline and winning that game and that battle against yourself and not allowing you to self-destruct. Because if you know who you are and if you know what you're going to do, if you know what the enemy is and you know the conditions, right? Like he talks about in the art of war, the conditions, like a good, he always talks about a good general will know how to proceed when you're in the wide open, when there's fire, when there's people to your back, when you're being flanked, when you're surrounded on all sides, right? Like when you're in this kind of a land, when you're in that kind of land, all these different scenarios that he's saying that a good general knows how to respond in those circumstances. Well, hey man, no different for your mind, right?
Right.
Like if your discipline is that I need to get in front of more people, but I know that I need to be in X setting for that to happen, well, then you know how to win that battle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't even know that about yourself, you'll never win that battle. It's going to
Yeah.
always flank you and it's going to take you out,
Yeah.
right? Like if you know that you cannot say no to ice cream and you are on a path to be disciplined and to drop some pounds or to get even more fit, whatever it might be, and you put ice cream in your house, are you setting yourself up for success or are you setting yourself up for failure? Are you allowing your lack of discipline to say, no, I don't actually want the ice cream in the house because I know that it's an
Right.
enemy for me? Are you able to say, no, no, I'm not gonna do that, right? And that's what's key, I think, is we got to know who we are so that we know who we're battling, so that we can overcome the negative elements. And also, it even talks about in the book, Art of War, that the spies that come to spy on you, which are the enemy, that you treat them well so that they can give you information. Well, the spies might be the things that give you dopamines that lead you in the direction of good outcomes that you can then say, hey, spy, how do I get more of you? What
Mm-hmm.
is it about this that brings you joy? What is it about this that fulfills you? And digging into that and finding out how you can do more of those types of things, because you can replace the negatives with the goods, right?
Yeah.
I think that's actually a great book that talk. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you guys go out and just read the whole thing, but if you have a Audible subscription, you can actually get the abridged version for free, and it's read by the guy from Game of Thrones who nobody liked, who was like he was like the bad guy in between everybody, always trying to plot. What was his name?
I didn't watch it. I don't know.
Marcus will find it and put his face on the show notes.
All right.
But man, he was the one that was the conniver. Anyways,
Yeah.
it's read by him, so the voice is great. So it's very entertaining. But if you take a moment, I think it was like a day it took me to listen through that, right?
Okay.
And listen to that. It may give you some insights. Okay, this is not really talking about war. Yes, it is. It's talking about war, but it's not only applicable to warfare in the traditional sense of battle and taking the lives of your enemies, right?
Right.
It can be in the battle of taking the lives of your demons, which are trying to derail you, which are part of you. Because we all
Mhm.
have demons. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. They're in us. None of us are free of them. None of us are perfect. We've all done things in our lives we're not proud of, said things in our lives we're not proud of, formed habits that we wish we hadn't formed. But it's really up to us to make those changes. And I don't think that you can make any of those changes until you understand who you are.
Mm. That's right. Do like a self inventory, self check. Keep it real with yourself about what you need to do, and focus on fixing it.
100%. Kevin Hart says, every day I wake up, all I do is look in the mirror and tell myself that I'm going to be better than I was yesterday
Hmm.
because the battle is against me. I don't care
Hmm.
about anybody else out there. The only battle that I need to win is against myself each day.
Hmm.
And he's got an
Yeah.
interesting story, right? Obviously, super charismatic and famous as all get out. But like, if you listen to his story, his upbringing, his family, and all that, like, he didn't come from this amazing environment,
Right.
right? But he chose, right? Another guy that people probably like, or maybe they don't like. I think people are probably split, but like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, great message about all that as well, right?
Hmm.
Positivity. And I think that that's key, man. You got to feed your mind with positive things. You know what I
Hmm.
don't watch anymore at all? Ever.
What's that?
The news.
Yeah.
I don't ever watch the
Pressing.
news.
Yeah.
It's negative, it's depressing, it's opinion based. There's no facts in there. It's just all there to manipulate you in one way or another. And people sometimes when I tell people that, they go, you don't watch the news? Or listen, man, I got a phone, I got social media. If something really big is going on, I'm gonna know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need the talking heads and the pundits to be yapping in my ear all day with all this negativity, right? Just like TV shows that I ingest,
Hmm.
right? I I I I stay away from like the drama filled TV shows, the
Yeah.
negative TV shows, right? You know, I watch YouTube all the time on my big TV now because I figured
Yeah.
out that you could just use a smart TV and do that. I watch videos about things that I'm passionate about. Like I love boating. So I'm
Yeah.
every day watching a video about better way to operate a boat, better way to dock a boat, better way to park a boat, how to maintain a boat, this, that, and the other, right? Also about social media and how you can be more effective on it and YouTube and like you name it. Anything that I'm passionate about, I watch it. And also what I do with my children to try to get them in the habit, we have Disney Plus, and so yeah, there's lots of cartoons there, and like, fine, that's great. I think a lot of them have good messages behind them. But I'll sit there and I'll watch the series on the whales.
Yeah. Like Nat Geo.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and my daughter loves it. My wife's like, "Why are
Hmm.
you watching that with her? She's 3." I go, "She loves it. Look at her.
Hmm.
She's so intrigued. She's asking
Hmm.
me all sorts of questions." Man, we can help our children to build that curiosity in them because really, at the end of the day, that curiosity factor is what's going to help you through what we're talking about, right? If you're not curious about how to beat yourself, the negative you, because we all have the
Yeah.
good you and the good us and the negative us, right? If you're not curious about that, then you'll never get there, right?
Mm. Yeah, I like what you were saying about Kevin Hart with how he looks in the mirror. I think about that a lot, and I say to myself, "Talk to me nicely." When
Mm,
I'm saying "talk to me nicely," I'm talking to myself.
yeah.
When you tell yourself that you can't do something, or you're bad at it, or you mess something up, you want to fill your own mind with positive thoughts as well, because there's going to be enough negative thoughts coming to you from the outside world, right?
Hmm.
um and sometimes people will be like, man, you just let that roll off, is because I feel I'm almost bulletproof. Like, you can't really hurt
Mm,
my feelings. You could say
hmm.
something that I may not like, but
Right.
I can't allow you to control me. You might be able to physically touch me, but I can protect myself. And the way that I protect myself is by talking to myself nicely. So talk to me nicely is me telling myself that. I have to tell myself positive things, that I can do things, or reminding myself of the good things I have done, in order to keep myself functional and focused and moving in the right direction, because it's a slippery slope. when you're not doing those things, because you can get into your own head, and it can
Mm,
feel good to be in a bad place, and you can be there a little bit too long. So you
mm,
have to constantly remind yourself, that you got to move forward. It's always good when you do have positive people around you. That's a much, but that's not always the case. And then sometimes you're by yourself. So
right.
I like the fact that the Miracle Morning kind of also has that built in, where you're
Hmm.
doing this self analysis, and you're by yourself, and you're doing that inventory, and you're journaling. That's really cool. I don't think I've ever journaled before. So maybe that's something I need to focus on. Also, I have pretty bad handwriting, so I might have to like do it in notes or something like that.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't know
that's
if I could
fine.
read what I wrote down, or if
Yeah.
anybody else could read it. Especially if I leave notes to my kids, they're gonna be like, "Dad left us this, but we have no clue what it
Yeah.
says."
Yeah. Well,
Um,
hey, and that's fine. Again, knowing yourself. I
yeah.
write my journal to myself. I scribe it. I write it. But you're
Mhm.
right. The journal that I write to my daughters, I write it in notes because yes, I need them to actually be able to read
Yeah.
it.
I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
No, you're not alone. You're not alone at all. And let's wrap this up with one last quote that I heard again from this yogi. I'm going to find his name and send it to Marcus so Marcus can put it in the show notes. And he says, the key to happiness is to never allow yourself to become uncentered, right? To always be in control of yourself. And he says, why would you ever allow what other people do to affect you and change your level of peace or non-peace inside of you? That is the ultimate form of slavery,
Mm,
when you allow other people to control how you feel.
mm.
And I said, wow, that's really deep, because what a great thing. Like, how many times have you in your life been in some sort of a discussion with somebody that said something to you, and the rest of the day you were off,
Yeah.
right? Like, they had control of you the entire day and probably didn't even think about it again themselves. But
Right.
yet, all you did all day was think about it,
Mhm.
ran it through your mind over and over and over again. So I love that you say that you're bulletproof, or you're at least working to always be bulletproof and allow things to flow. Because you're right. It doesn't matter that you're human and that it might initially make you upset, but how do you respond to it? How do you
Yeah.
allow it to impact you and impact the rest of your day and impact the way that you're going to be, right? Choose to be happy and be happy no matter what.
Mhm. Yep. I like
Awesome.
it.
All right. Well, Kenny, I hope that our audience got something out of this. I certainly needed to talk about it, and I loved talking about it with you. Thank you for
Hey,
going down this path with me.
appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate it. Rap stars, we're out. Thank you so much. Peace.
All right.